Bookover, a little book club where we talk about books, especially ones that give us book hangovers. I'm Sarah, and with me is Megan.
Hey, everybody.
And today we are talking about Hello Heathens by Nicole Fiorina. I'm probably saying it really wrong.
We need to look up these names and like YouTube pronunciations. I think that's our new goal.
Maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe it's fun to listen to me try to pronounce names. I don't know. It's just the last name.
I need to silently sit there and be like, I don't know either.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so this book sat in my Kindle Unlimited since it came out in April 2021.
Oh wow. So it's been in your 20. The 20 books you get, it's had a coveted spot.
Yeah.
For over a year.
Yes.
Wow.
The author posted on Instagram a couple of posts about it, and I was like, I really want to read this book. And then it came out, I grabbed it, but I wasn't ready for it because, whatever reason, right? And then I think I read something in it, and it was just like, I think it was like going over the characters, like who's who or something. And I was like, this is too much for me. Like I couldn't. And so and then I never went back to it.
It's like they got you right at the character list.
Yeah, the character list was like too complicated for me. So guess what I did this time? I skipped the character list.
Smart move. I feel like that should be something you go back to. Like
I did. I had to go back to it at one point. They mentioned somebody. And I'm like, wait, who's that? And then I was like, that's who you are. Boom.
I think because they're in the front, we think we have to read them to start out with. And I did that too. And I'm like, I'm not going to remember this. But then I went back and I'm like, okay, this is helpful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's fun.
I'm happy I read it. And this is a really weird parallel. I kind of got Rebel Without a Cause vibes from this because, okay, I'm a huge James Dean fan. I love him so much. No, like I went to like Indiana to his hometown to the James Dean Festival, like
wow.
Before children, obviously. Saw his life, saw where he grew up, saw his high school, like totally a fan. Wow. Okay. He so I forgot his character's name in Rebel Without a Cause, but basically in Rebel Without a Cause, like the grownups are not listening to him, right? Like he's so frustrated. He's trying to tell like this is happening. I need help. And no one is listening to him. And it's so frustrating. And I could just see like teenagers feel this all the time, but like you just watch this movie and he conveys it so well. It's just like frustration of like, you're not listening. And this book, I feel like with the Heathens and with Julian, and then with Fallon, even no one is listening. There's just so much like we're set in our ways. This is the curse. This is how it has to be. And no one's listening to him and like, or even paying attention to all the good he's trying to do. He lets them like beat him. They like abuse him, and he's still trying to be a functioning. He does things for the good of the town. He's still a mechanic. He's still trying to be an active member, but he's like, all the Heathens are being looked down upon and stuff because of this dang curse. And no one's, listening is more not just like with your ears, but seeing, you know? So it's just like, I felt like there's a parallel with that frustration of like, you're not listening, you're not seeing. And then he gets to the point, like I'm jumping in here. He gets mad at Fallon because Fallon was like so much about how like she was looked down upon back in Texas and how she let people define her and she kept that definition for herself. And he's like, he got so mad at her, like, you can't do it. But guess what? He was doing it too. Like he let people think those things, say those things, and he kept them. And totally,
and even his own people, his own coven, like they were saying, like, oh, you're conduits, like you have to do this for us, like you were just born to have this curse. It's kind of like they, like with the firstborn sons, which is interesting because historically firstborn sons are like, what, the heirs, they're like what's most coveted. But in this coven, it's like they're throwaways. They're like, well, we have to get them out of the way. and that's their responsibility, that's their lot in life. And like, they're like, everyone's tried to break the curse, but no one's been successful, so we just kind of like throw them shove them to the side, don't make any ruffles, this is what you have to do, also you're evil and bad. And then poor Julian on top of it has that shadow blood, which makes it even worse for him. Like, it's not his fault.
It's not his fault. And that was like, that's why I felt so bad for him, because like so many things happened in his life and none of it was his fault. None of it was his fault. And he just like blamed himself. And then, and then even with his friends, like there's so much, they put so much pressure on him. Because like Julian's family, the Blackwell family, should have been like the top family of the coven, because of his dad getting in trouble. They got pushed down to like a lower ranking, but everything relied on Julian to break the curse. Really, like deep down, like they were relying, I felt like, and maybe it's just because it was his perspective, but I just felt like, yeah, all the Heathens were working to try to break this, but they were all looking to him. Like everything that happened, they looked to him, because he is the leader, and so just the amount of freaking pressure on this poor guy.
It was interesting to have a main male character who could like wasn't necessarily, I mean, he was the hero and everything, but like and at the end he was, but he also, like, I don't know, to have one that's so looked down upon and so like, and he was down on himself. I just felt that was it was different. It was different from what we end up reading a lot, because I feel like we end up reading these, like, even if they're shunned upon society, they're like, they've got some kind of like, they're a leader of a gang, or they're this or that. So this was very different. Or he is a powerful witch, but he's like very shamed, and like you said, he doesn't. It's not like he's, like you said, he's not seen, but he's powerless in a lot of ways, because like he's at the mercy of the whole freaking town, which ironically wants to burn him, even though they were trying to escape like the Salem witch trials where they were getting burned. So I think that's some commentary right there, that like they're just, even though they founded those towns to be safe and escape from witch trials, they're putting on their own witch trials, which just speaks to how society is in general. I like that, the nuances. There's a lot of nuances to this story that speaks to mob mentality, the way human nature, a lot of good stuff here. And then I found a huge Romeo and Juliet theme. Very, very, very Romeo and Juliet,
and that's kind of in Rebel too. Sorry.
Yeah,
there's a love story there, and like she's like the popular princessy type, and she's drawn to the rebel, and so I love Fallon so much, because she shows up to this town, and this town's just telling her, like, right off from the start, like, there's the two covens, but you can't really be involved with this one, and you belong to this one, which doesn't make sense because her parents are from both. So none of that made sense to me. I felt very trickery going on. Like there was a lot of trickery going on. But I loved how she was just like, she didn't take what they were telling her, and she saw for herself. And she was like, no, I'm not getting that feel. I don't think he's evil. I don't think, these are bad guys. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, even when they try to show like the like goat sacrifice thing, like, yeah, it scared her, but then like the next day, she's like, maybe, like there's just like so much. And then I loved how even Cain, was trying to manipulate her, and it wasn't working.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, if that was going to happen. Like, because at first, like with the arrow, it kind of worked. She was frozen, but she fought it off later, which I liked.
She fought it off, and then like his like advances on her, like she was like, and then she was just like, this doesn't feel right. And then she was able to like fight it. And I was like waiting for her to come back as like a witch. Like I was waiting for that to happen in the story, of her actually having that in her. And that didn't really happen yet. I could see something maybe happening later on, because she was able to see the Ferris wheel that like no one else could see, from like where the one group, oh gosh, what are they called? The Norse Woods Coven. Hang out, and they hid that from everybody else, but she could see it, and she shouldn't have been able to see that
because she was of the woods technically. Well, and I thought it was interesting, she did have the power to see the ghosts. So I liked that. I liked that she saw his his brother and found out that whole story. that was really, and that like I think that like gave her more layers to him and what he goes through in his life. And it was interesting that she was like mortician and you know and worked with another heathen too.
Mhm.
So she was
Well, a
kind of
lot of people
getting,
worked with the other heathen, you know, like that's the thing. Like it's
yeah,
like you can that was the frustrating part. And I'm like, I loved it because it was like there's still, you know, one's a mechanic, one works at the cemetery, like they all one owns the bar that you go to. It's like so they're all active members of the
town.
community,
Yeah.
yet you're still looking down at them just
Because
because you're told to.
they have a well, and they have a deadly curse where if you look into their face. But again, not their fault. And maybe they should have all been trying to, I don't know, break the curse. Why didn't they all look into it? Although I think so, I was wondering, like, why, like, what's the story here? Like, who brought her back? Why did they take her away? And so we find out it's because she's the only one that can break the curse, and her father must have been trying to protect her.
Mhm.
Thought that like they would kill her to break the curse,
Mhm.
which didn't end up being the case. But so maybe my thought is like, the father knew he wanted her protected. Those books had been stolen, so some people knew about it. Um, so that's like my thought of,
Yeah.
with why they were trying to like induct her into that coven, even though she
Right.
wasn't meant to be in one.
Mhm. I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah, I found that interesting because I'm like, well, could you imagine if they all sat down and they all read that, they would have jumped to that conclusion, right?
and
But it
then
wasn't until Julian read it. He read one part of the book and he was like, oh crap, I have to protect her because they're going to want to kill her,
yeah,
right? But then he read the Blackwell book and he read the story of his family
and
and
like
he
how
finally
different.
pieced it together.
Did he piece it together? Did he think that see, here's what I was confused on. I thought like my interpretation was that, and I could be wrong, was that like he didn't know that that would break the curse, like that he was just willing to die with her. Like I think he was just I thought he
He
was
was
willing to
willing to
live with the
die
curse.
with her. He thought that he needed to. I took it as he read, you know, from the first guy that he wasn't there with her to help to
Mhm.
be with her and
He
to die
requested
with
it.
her. Yeah. So I think he thought that if he went, and I'm putting words into somebody's mouth, their brain.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it was like more like I'm gonna go and I think he was thinking he was gonna sacrifice himself to save her. I think
Okay.
that's what he thought he needed to do. It wasn't to show there was a part of like needing to love, and that's what him being willing to sacrifice himself in place of her was him showing his love for her, and that's what broke the curse, which was amazing. Was like actually
Mhm.
being there and being like, no, you need to live, I need to die, I love you.
And I had a similar interpretation with the end result where like, that was what broke the curse. But I didn't think that he did it intentionally thinking I'm going to break the curse. I think he like I think he read that, knew that the guy regretted it. And like knew like, and I think even before, I think if he didn't read that, he would have come to the same conclusion. He loved her,
Mhm.
saw her, like knew he was like heard that she was like gonna sacrifice, figured out she was gonna sacrifice herself, didn't want her to, like he rather have lived with the curse. And
Mhm.
then when he couldn't talk her off the ledge, it was kind of like when they jumped from the mountain the first time and he saved her, like if you jump, I jump.
Mhm.
um he was going to try to, and he wanted to save her, like in that moment, like I'll save her, you can live. But my thought wasn't that he thought that he had just like, I think it was a surprise at the end that the curse was broken
Yeah.
to him.
Yes. Yes. I
But
agree.
it made sense, but they probably pieced together why it happened, because it was
Yes.
like you needed the love. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was a great message though. Was just like
it was a great
the
message.
break the curse is love.
Yeah.
You know, basically.
Mhm.
It took that big dramatic jumping off a cliff act to get
Mhm.
there. But I just
And I like the circle back to the earlier cliff scene.
mhm. Yeah, especially since he was afraid of heights and he
Yeah.
was afraid of jumping, but
And
he was willing to do that
fear
for her.
and fears were such a big theme, because if you reveal the mask, which didn't kill her, but it killed other people, it shows you your biggest fear.
Mhm.
And then that was another thing where her fear was like tight spaces. And when they were trying to initiate her into that coven, which just goes to show you, like they put her in like a tight space. And I'm like, oh gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that coven. Now, let me say, I have a thing for witch books, especially ones that don't have like vampires and shifters. Like I like a good, coven story. I liked that it was set in a town of all witches, and it had this its own like history and kind of world. And it was like, I enjoyed that aspect of it. It's hard to find books like that are steeped in
Mhm.
magic. So that was fun. That was
Yeah.
a fun, especially around this time of the year.
Yeah. It was good because this is like the time of the year for Weeping Hollow, right? It's the name of the town. Like
Mhm.
yeah, it was cute. Some of the things the town did and stuff too. Um,
But also I like that it had that gothic kind of creepy vibe of like, oh, it's like this special cider makes you,
mhm.
tell the truth, or like in some of their rituals were not like for the faint of heart. Like it's not like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
I
not
liked that.
easy magic. It's like deep steeped,
Mhm. Mhm.
which I guess you kind of imagine, it was a gothic kind of magic, which I liked.
Mhm. I did too. I liked it a lot. I liked all
Mhm.
those. And I liked that Fallon, she was so upset that her mom never saw her, visited her
Oh
after she
yeah.
died. Her dad
Hmm.
never went. Gramps never went. But then her mom comes and tells her to like, no, 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 move on, let him die. He's no good. And she literally was like, no, you're wrong. And I was like, I just love Fallon because that was so strong of her to be like, no, you are wrong.
Yeah.
I just loved it. Because like, gosh, can you imagine your dead mother finally comes to see you and like,
Been
and like,
waiting for your whole life. Yep.
yeah, you wait forever, your whole life. Yeah. And that it's just,
And then you
oh,
defy what she says, which again I think makes it more meaningful at the end.
mhm.
That literally everybody was telling them. And I think it was because I think that gives it more of a playing field for her, because Julian had more connections and she was like all alone except for her grandpa. And then
Mhm.
he died, which huge for her. That's like her last relative.
I was
um
so mad at Grandpa though. Like I loved him, but I just
Mhm.
wish if he would have said, he knew things and he just wasn't willing to say those things. And I just wish he would have. I was expecting him to die and then show up and finally tell her stuff. And then that helped things click.
Yeah, but
And he didn't. And I was like, yeah.
I think it goes to what you were saying though about like the adult, like, well, and they were older, like they're in their 20s or whatever, so they're obviously adults, but
It's the
it goes to, I
elders.
guess,
Yeah.
the elders not listening, like you said, and the generational gaps. And um if they would have just said these things, it could have been worked out. I think Julian said on the cliff, he's like, I wish you would have, or I could have told you this days ago, and we could have been here, we could have jumped days ago, like if I had just told you, because he was trying to protect her.
Mhm.
He didn't want to tell her the curse because he didn't want her to sacrifice. He
Mhm.
didn't want his fellow heathens to kill her.
Mhm.
And all along, even before he knew that she was gonna, before he knew those things, he was trying to protect her because he knew that the other coven claimed her. So it was always a protective thing. So there's always a miscommunication with the guys trying to protect and not talking, and then the girl being
I know.
open.
It's so frustrating. There's so many times where I'm like, but I loved how he like would fight it and then he would give in. Like, he would be like, I can't, like that, the
And
haunted
she
mirror
didn't want to
house
be
thing and
yes,
all that.
and
Like,
she didn't want to be a secret. It's like if you just told him, but he couldn't tell. It's like,
it
ah,
makes sense though, because like from that fight, it got a little like for me, it was a little repetitive of them keep on fighting
yeah.
about like, I want to be with you and I can't be with you. And it was like a little, but I'm like thinking about it later on, I was like, that was just like the major issue, even from the beginning with the originals, that
Mhm.
started the curse. That was their hang up, was him and her saying that they won't understand, not wanting to see it, and him being like, I want you to meet everybody, and then there was that really bad aftermath from it.
Yes.
So I
Mhm.
think that it showed that like that was just like that hurdle they needed to get through. Like he needed to talk to her, she needed to talk to him, they
Mhm.
needed to have that happen, that revolution. I don't know. But yeah, it was interesting because the Heathens were like his close buddy friends and they've dealt with this so long. But then it was like for them to like, I get it, that like we want this curse broken and you're making it so we can't break this curse, and them dragging him off like broke my heart because these people are supposed to be your friends, but then they're being told one thing and they have like they felt so, I don't want to say imprisoned, but there's something, I can't think of the word, that they just like they had to do things that they were told to do by their coven and by the town, even if they didn't want to. Like Beck, I feel like didn't fully want to, but they did, and then they were mad at it. Was just like if everyone, we wouldn't have a story, but I'm like, if everyone would just talk to each other. You guys are hanging out, you guys know each other, you know what it's like to be you guys do all these torturous things to each other, and here's Julian being the last to do it to make sure no one goes too far with you guys, and then you do this to him. I don't know, that was really hard for me, and so I'm curious on how, I'm looking forward to seeing how the town moves on from it and how the Heathens move on to it and how they fix this damage, because that's a relationship that needs to be fixed. Even Julian and his mom, how she wouldn't even let him call her mom because of needing that separation. It
goes to show how they were treated and how they see themselves too, because that's the truth. They were so isolated. Well, I do wish that we had like a little bit of an I guess because they're gonna write more in the world, we'll get more, because I would have liked to. I'm definitely curious to see how, like you said, how does
I would have loved an epilogue of a little bit more, even like a month later. I felt satisfied at the end, don't get me wrong, but I would have loved to see something. I'm looking forward to Bone Island, which is the next book. And I'm hoping that we get a little bit of the Heathens in there, to see what happens
and how they're treated. And I would like to see, I'd like to see though their interactions with Julian though, after like he fought for this love, Jonah had worked with her. I'd like to see how they all end up
I love Jonah. He's my side character love in this one. I love Jonah so much. I loved him like almost from the start. I was like, I'm really interested in this guy, and then he grew on me so much. He is what the Heathens should have been for each other. Him sneaking in to talk to him trying to help the best he can, covering things up the best he can. I love Jonah. Is just like, I loved the Heathens. Zeph's like on the top. I don't know why. I'm so intrigued by him. His dad is an asshole, and I loved being in that meeting and hearing those things, and I'm like, are you serious? But like Zeph, and then Phoenix and Beck are kind of tied. Just, I'm intrigued by all of them, really, and so I'm looking forward to more.
I'm counting. Wait a minute. How many Heathens are there?
So we have Julian. Okay, we have Beck, Zeph, Phoenix, and Julian.
Beck, Zeph,
Phoenix,
Julian, and then Stone is the fifth, right?
I think, because there was originally 5, and then
the lost one, which is
the Danvers.
Stone. Yes, which is the one that. So he's technically a heathen, but he won't have had to. Well, I guess he suffered through the curse before he was frozen. So okay, so then
and that connection of her, that's him. That's got to be him. So how Fallon kept on having the guy that kept showing up that she said was dead, that was freezing cold. That's got it. That's the connection.
Oh my God. Okay, because I was thinking about that during this conversation. And I was like, wait a second. I don't think that ever, because when we talk about with ghosts, I'm like, I don't think that ever got resolved to who that ghost was. That makes sense.
Oh, so God, that's why I was expecting her to like somehow find, because he was like, find me, constant find me. But like, I don't know if it was him trying to trick her to get there, or if he actually just needed her help. And I don't know, we'll find out.
And he disappeared. She said that like she couldn't help him, but almost didn't want to because it was like her friend. So that's interesting.
Mhm.
But like, and he stopped visiting her. So that's interesting. Oh, that'll be very interesting. So maybe they'll get brought into it more than we realize.
Maybe.
Just because
Yeah.
they're together doesn't mean their story in this is over.
Right.
So that'll be interesting. I
Yeah.
did not. Okay, I'm glad I was counting heathen. 'Cause
Yeah.
I did not.
Yeah. Cause
I
right. I was
didn't
like,
think
there's 5
that
heathens, but
happened.
then I'm like, there was one family that
Yes, the
that
lost
the
line.
lost line. Yeah. So
Yeah.
he'll bring that line back. So that's Bone Island is Stone's story.
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to that. That'll be interesting for sure, especially with that. Like, I wonder if they'll have a friendship or how you know. So he
Right.
wasn't and I always thought that at the beginning of the book, I thought, well, I bet he isn't a ghost because he was different. He appeared different. He said, "Find me." I have a feeling like maybe some he's in trouble, but then it didn't circle back to that. So I was like, "Huh, what's that?" I was like, "Could that have been Julian when he
I
was
thought that I
younger?"
went back and reread that at one point because I'm like, is
Yeah,
it because I'm like, is it
'cause he didn't
Julian
have
in the
yeah.
woods running away from his coven or something, or when his
Mhm. Or
brother
was it like the
died, or
original, like one of the original guy that they're like talking about? Yes. Okay, so that yeah, solved. That's the mystery solved.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And I do have to say, I did like the ending scene of the babies. I liked how it showed that connection that they had as infants, how like her
Oh
mom's
yeah.
there dying, which is so sad. And then,
Mhm.
Julian's there crying, but once Fallon was next to Julian, he
Yeah.
stopped crying. And I like
Yeah.
that because Julian still has a hard time sleeping, right? Until
Mhm.
he's sleeping with her.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Throughout his whole child. So that yeah, I liked that too. That was a
A
nice.
little something. Yeah.
Yeah, that was sweet.
Hmm. Okay.
All right.
There you go.
Yeah.
It was a good
Well,
Halloween read. I feel like that's
it
a
is.
perfect, it's a good one for this time of year. I feel like you could read it in November. You could probably read it anytime, but I feel like the fall is like a good
Yeah.
time for it. And I'm looking forward to the next book. So
Yes, definitely. Well, and happy Halloween to anybody
yeah.
listening the day this goes live because it's like the day before Halloween.
Mhm,
So
mhm. Yeah.
happy Halloween.
Happy
Here's your Halloween read, y'all.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we just spoiled it all for you. So if you're listening, you've already read it.
Yeah, hopefully. If not, go read it. It's fun. Because we didn't talk about like specific scenes really. So
Yeah, honestly, you could just I feel like you could read this one and be okay with it.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Thanks everyone.
Bye,
Happy
everyone.
Halloween. Bye.
Happy Halloween.